All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to 7 Gen Live. Happy Friday. I know it is very, very cold here in Mission. I'm freezing. It's cold in the office. I have a space heater here, so hopefully I'll be okay for the rest of the show. What's up, Aaron? Aaron Epps is my co-host today. I'm really happy that he's here with me today. Let us know where you're tuning in from, Aaron.
So I'm actually out in Vermont now. I moved over the summer, but I'm really happy to be able to still be connected to the work. Just wanted to real quick give a shout out to Mike. I'm filling in for Mike today. He had to deal with a little emergency. And so just really want to send our thoughts and prayers to him and his family today. But some people probably didn't even notice. White guy with a beard, wooden background, same thing. So
you guys are the same person almost.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm super excited to be able to jump in today, and I guess we'll jump right in then and introduce our guest. So I personally am going to start with a personal thank you, David, because I have always wanted to really get into reading, and aside from Harry Potter, it's never really happened. And I picked up your book about 2 months ago and could not put it down, and I've been on a reading spree since. So I'm really excited and honored to be able to introduce David Heska Wanbli Weiden, the author of Winter Counts and Spotted Tail. So thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, it's my pleasure to be here. You know, I was so thrilled. I support your organization completely. It's on my website. You guys are doing good work there. So really, it's just my honor to be here.
Well, I just wanted to say, kind of bounce off of what Aaron said, you know, for a lot of people who don't normally read, we are excited to read this book. I have people messaging me, where do I get this book? How do I purchase it? So let's just start off with that. How do people get their hands on this book, or maybe even the Audible version?
Yes. Well, thank you so much. So Winter Counts is my novel, which was published by Echo HarperCollins about 6 months ago. It is obviously set on the Rosebud reservation and a few chapters in Denver. I am an enrolled citizen of our nation. And so, you know, we can talk about my connection to Rosebud later. I have deep family ties there, you know, but I published Winter Counts about 6 months ago. It is widely available on any online seller, you know, Amazon. I like this place called Bookshop is great. You know, any of those. It's also available if you're a member of the Book of the Month Club. You can get it as an add-on, I think, for $10 if you're a member of that. And it's available digitally. You know, you can buy it on Kindle or whatever. And of course, it's available on Audible. It was recorded, it was narrated by a Canadian First Nations actor named Daryl Dennis. And I haven't listened to it myself, but I hear that he did a really great job of narrating the book. And so I insisted upon an Indigenous actor, and he did great. So it's available, audiobook, all the formats. And I should point out as well that I've donated all of my speaking fees, because I've been doing a lot of events and such. 100% of my speaking fees have been donated to the COVID-19 relief fund for the Sicangu people. And so I think to date I've raised $3,000 or $4,000, and I'm just, you know, I know our people are being hit there real hard, and so happy to help out.
Awesome. Thank you. So you mentioned the book it takes place on Rosebud, and you mentioned you're an enrolled citizen. So yeah, could you talk a little bit more about your ties to Rosebud? How often do you come back? Where are you now?
Yeah, so I'm in Denver, Colorado right now. I'm a professor of Native American Studies at Metropolitan State University of Denver. I grew up in Denver, but my mom was raised in Mission. And so we would come up frequently. We'd spend summers there. I know it like the back of my hand. I still have family there. My people are the Beauvays and the Cordries. And so my uncle, Vince Cordry, was the vice president of the tribe back in the 50s. My great friend and cousin, Jim Cordry, he just retired recently. He was the special officer for the BIA or something, financial officer. So Jim Cordry, a lot of folks know Jim. And so the Boveys, the Spotted Tails, the Cordries are my people. And so I come up frequently. I have two boys, and we come up every summer, usually for the Rosebud, Wachipi, and the Sundance. We typically go to Crow Dog's Sundance. And so, I love being relatively close in Denver to Rosebud. And so, yeah, it's just, it's great to visit as much as I can. We just want this dang disease to get past us so we can get back to normal life again.
Mhm.
So David, what have you been up to in Denver? I mean, you're a lawyer, you got a PhD, you're a very, very busy man. I mean, how the heck did you find time to write a book?
Yeah, I get a little embarrassed by all those degrees, and I like to give some context to that. I'm a first generation college student. Okay, my mom, Ramona Cordry, grew up in Mission. I know Mission so well, but she did not graduate from college. Neither did my dad, and so they didn't really know what to tell me about going to college and all that. I kind of had to figure that out on my own. And we grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood in Denver. And so, when you grow up, kind of financially challenged, at least I did, I wanted a career that would give me some financial stability. So I wouldn't have like the bill collectors calling the way my mom did. I mean, it was, it was rough. And so I did practice law for a while, but I discovered it wasn't for me. I do donate legal time now to an organization in Denver called the Denver Indian Family Resource Center. What we do is we enforce ICWA here in Colorado. And so, whenever there's a Native kid that is going to be moved into the foster system, or the adoption system, we make sure that the federal law is going to be enforced. And so I was on the board of directors there for a number of years. But I discovered that really my passion is teaching. And so I went back to school. I did get a PhD, and I teach at Metropolitan State University of Denver, which is a school for first generation college students, students of color, military veterans. I love my students. They're a lot like me. They're just doing their best. They're not there to party. They're there to learn and improve their lives. And so I really enjoy teaching them. Now, you're right, writing a book while, doing all this. And I've got two kids myself. I'm a dad. And what that means is, for the time it took me to write Winter Counts, every morning for 18 months, I got up at 4 a.m. Okay, that would be 4 a.m. And I just wrote for 2 hours, because that's really the only time that I had in the day to write. So that is kind of how the book got written, and all of these degrees I have. Really, I'm just a teacher and a writer.
So have you always known that you would one day write a book? Did that just come up? I mean, have you always had this passion for writing?
Great question. Thank you so much. I always have had the passion for writing, but again, when you grow up, kind of financially challenged, you focus mainly on just paying the bills. At least I did. And so it wasn't honestly until kind of the middle of my life, that I'm like, wait a minute, maybe I should do this now before time runs out on me. So I've always been a bookworm. If you look around my office here, if you can see that, you can see that I've got a lot of books. But I didn't really understand how a person became a writer. I didn't really have that frame of reference. And so it wasn't until about 10, 12 years ago that I said, wait a minute, I'm going to teach myself how to write some fiction. So I always wanted to be a writer, but it took a while for me to get there. And so anybody that's tuning in, I want to urge you, to tell your stories. I mean, there's no time like the present to just start writing about what you know. Tell your stories, get them down on paper. I mean, I promise you, if I can write a book, anybody can. All right.
Yeah, that's such. There are so many stories. I've thought of that. I used to teach at St. Francis, and so just working with students, and just there are so many amazing stories to share that I see documentaries, and I'm like, our students could be featured in these films, and that there's really some important stories to be told there. And so kind of jumping, I was wanting to ask this question a little later, but kind of what do you see as maybe your role in elevating indigenous stories and stories of that are too often not told?
Yeah, thank you for that, great question, Aaron. Look, my role is, I think, just to start a discussion. So, in my role as a professor in my day job, I would write these little articles about Native issues and such, but very few people would read them. Other professors would read them, and we already know about all of these issues. And what I'm trying to accomplish in Winter Counts, first of all, is to tell a great story. I want people to turn those pages and stay up all night reading. But I do hope that people will learn something. Obviously, folks watching in here, many folks will be on the reservation, and they already know about this stuff. But for folks that are not on the res, I wanted them to understand about some of the issues that the Sicangu people face. The Major Crimes Act, which is kind of the focus of the book, IHS, our healthcare system, commodities, getting decent, healthy and sustainable food, the juvenile justice system. All of these issues, are something that we're facing, that as we kind of try to deal with the effects of colonization. And so I wanted to start a dialogue, and I can tell you that I think the book has had that. I've been contacted by some former US attorneys who said, you got it exactly right in this book. Okay. I've been contacted by the dean of a major law school who said, you have gotten people interested in this issue of criminal justice reform in a way that I couldn't. And I've been contacted by some policymakers. And so if I can kind of get a dialogue going, and just contribute to it in a small way, maybe we can see some real change for Indigenous people.
David, that really ties into my next question. I mean, was that planned out, or did you have a strategy in raising awareness to these issues while still being true to your art and the story itself?
It was absolutely planned. When I first started writing this book, I'd been teaching about the Major Crimes Act, and we have a problem on the reservation of under prosecution and over incarceration. Okay, so too often our people are arrested on a minor charge that in the state court system might get them 6 months in jail, but if they're prosecuting the federal system, they might do 3 years, for reasons that we don't need to get into now. That's a problem. And then we have the feds that are refusing to prosecute a lot of felony crimes. And so I've known about this for a while. And so I planned that. But as I was writing the book, things kept popping in. Like I added in a final draft the story there. I think we all probably remember this, but those middle school kids from Pine Ridge who went to a hockey game in Rapid City, and those, I'm going to keep this PG here. I have some words that I'd like to use to describe them, but those people that poured beer on these little kids' heads from the balcony up above, and then one of them was arrested and was acquitted. I get asked about that so much. I added that to the book. That's obviously a real story, but I put it in there because I wanted people to understand what Indigenous people face when they go off res. These little kids didn't deserve that. They made the honor roll. They deserve to have a good time without being humiliated and shamed. So I did plan the main thrust of the book, but as I was writing it, all these other things kept creeping in.
Well, I would just say it was super well done. I loved the story, but I also found myself learning a lot. It was like a perfect blend of fiction and nonfiction. So well done. As you were writing, obviously it's a very real story. There are some difficult and some traumatic events, and so I'm wondering how did you how do you portray that in a way that's true to reality and tells a story, based on on the ground experience, but that doesn't fall into the trap of poverty porn, and knowing that a large portion of the people who will be reading your book, really this could be their first exposure to life on a reservation and some of the challenges and opportunities there.
Yeah, thanks also for that question. I gave a lot of thought as to how I was going to portray my main character, Virgil Wounded Horse. And I decided that I was not going to write into the stereotypes. Virgil Wounded Horse, he's had a problem a little bit with booze in the past, but he's completely sober now. He never takes a drink in the book. I also felt that although I wanted to portray life on the res accurately and honestly, I didn't want to fall into that poverty porn trap. And so I celebrate life on the res, and I don't want to give up any spoilers in the book, but I think people would say that, by the end of your book, there's, a true embracing of Native culture, spirituality, and life on the reservation. And that was a very conscious decision on my part. Now, having said that, I get a lot of emails from folks. So the book was a mild bestseller, so it sold a fair amount of copies. And I get some letters and emails, notes from folks, including some on the res. And I get a lot. People say, wait, is this person intended to be that one? I probably get more than anything. They say the lawyer that in the book, Charlie Later Charge, and they think they know who it is in Rapid City. And I'm like, no, no, no. It's a work of fiction. Okay. Um, you know, uh, uh, I invented freely. So none of the people in there are really based on actual humans, with the exception of the character Nathan, 14-year-old, who is largely based on my son, David Jr., who is 16. But when I wrote the book, he was 13 and 14. So I borrowed a lot from him. Obviously, if you're on the reservation, you're going to recognize some things in there, like the Buffalo Brew Coffee Shop and Turtle Creek. Other things I just I just flat out invented. So it is a work of fiction. I need to be clear on that.
I will say that I was guilty. I was trying to figure out who you were talking about and if I knew them. So I'm definitely guilty of that. But I just got a question on Live Messenger. For anybody who has not read the book yet, how would you explain this story? What is it about?
Oh, great question. Thank you, whoever sent that in. So Winter Counts is the story of Virgil Wounded Horse, who's a private enforcer. If someone can't get justice on the reservation because federal authorities are refusing to prosecute a child abuser, a rapist, a molester, an arsonist, maybe they hire my fictional character, Virgil Wounded Horse, who will beat up somebody who hurt your child. And he charges $100 for each bone he breaks and $100 for each tooth he knocks out. And so it's his story of kind of grappling with the morality of being a vigilante, because obviously we would prefer that the federal government would do its job. But when they don't, maybe private citizens have to step in. And I want to make clear another thing too. I am critical of certain bodies in the book, but not of our tribal government. The criticism that I level in the book is squarely aimed at the federal government, the Major Crimes Act, and all of the treaties that have been broken for our people and all indigenous people. So I just want to make that real clear here. If anybody's seeing this, I do not criticize our tribal government. I mean, our tribal government is not perfect, but my critique is aimed at the federal government, and in my view, their failure to do right by Native people and breaking all the promises that were made to us. So to get back to the original question, the story is about a hired vigilante and his attempt to come to terms with his own Native identity and to raise his nephew, Nathan, and just to kind of grapple with doing the right thing in today's world.
Yeah, I just got so excited at the beginning. We forgot to lay the groundwork for what the book's actually about. Another kind of fun and sort of unexpected theme that I found in the book was food and kind of food sovereignty. So I was wondering kind of where that came from, if there was any personal experience that you had as far as kind of finding identity through food or food sovereignty, or kind of where that strain came from, because that was really cool.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So in the book, there's sort of a sub theme. There are a couple of different, what we would call a subplot in writing. There's the story of Marie, who's Virgil's girlfriend. She's trying to decide whether she wants to go to University of New Mexico Medical School or stay on the res. So there are all these sort of subplots and sub themes happening. And one of them is the indigenous food movement. Now, I'm aware of this because I've worked in restaurants my entire life. Ever since I was 14 years old, I've been a cook, a busboy, a waiter, a dishwasher, you name it. Okay. And so sort of food is, and the restaurant industry is in my blood. And so I became aware about 5 years ago of this real movement that's starting to happen of the indigenous food movement and food sovereignty. And, they're advocating that we get rid of the colonized food system we have, get rid of wheat and sugar and dairy, and just eat the way that our people did, hundreds of years ago. And I'm intrigued by that. On the other hand, it's not that easy to go out and pick, wild herbs and such if you're trying to raise a family. So I wanted to bring that in there because I do think that food sovereignty is important. We need to get healthy and sustainable food on reservations across the country. So I wanted to get that in there, but it's a complicated issue, like so many things are in Indian country.
So just to take it back a little bit, for anybody who even dreams of becoming an author and writing a book, I'm sure there's no clear, straight path to writing a book. But how did you gain that confidence and find your way as an indigenous author to make space for yourself in a world that is very westernized and I would say very white?
Oh yeah, thanks for that question. I'd love to, share sort of my experience. So about 10 or 12 years ago, I was teaching at a school in Indiana, and I started taking some classes at a local writing center. And the instructor said, "Hey, you're pretty good at this, but you've got a lot to learn." I'm like, "Yeah, I know, I know." And she said, "You should go get a degree in creative writing, a Master of Fine Arts." And I'm like, "I think I've had enough schooling. Can't I just learn this on my own?" And she's like, you need to go do this. So I enrolled at a school. I'm not going to mention it. And I had a wonderful time there. But it was, I'm pretty sure I was the only Indigenous person at the time in the school. And in some of the classes, people would be telling me, non-native people would be telling me, well, Native people don't speak that way. Native people don't listen to rap. They don't listen to rap music. And I'm like, okay. And they were telling me, they were presuming to tell me, how Native people behave. And, I had a problem with this. So a new writing program opened up at the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe. So Native people watching this, about IAIA. I mean, it's a really important school, for Native people. It's an art school, but they opened their first master's program and you could study there and work remotely. And so I transferred there and I studied with, it was a dream come true. I studied with wonderful Indigenous mentors, some of the famous writers. 90% of my fellow classmates were Indigenous, so I didn't have to explain things. And so a lot of IA right now is sort of becoming the center of this, what's called a new literary renaissance for Native people. So a couple of my classmates at IA are Tommy Orange. If you know his book, they're there. I think everybody knows Tommy, so Tommy and I are friends. Therese Mayotte, she has a book called Heartberries that did very well. Jake Skeets, he and I were in the same graduating class. Another person, Dennis Staples. So IAIA is sort of becoming the center, the hub of the new Native literature and writing that's happening. So I transferred there. And I would urge folks that are watching this that if you're a Native person and you feel that you want to write, please give a look to either the undergraduate program at IAIA or the MFA program, because I can vouch for it all the way.
Awesome. Yeah, I know we sent a student down to IAI, and it was just such a cool opportunity, and really unique. And so just wanted to reset things here about halfway in. Thanks for joining us on 7 Gen Live. Here we've got David Heska Wanbli Weiden. His recent book Winter Counts is out and available wherever you get books. Can Google quick Indigenous owned bookstores. I know there's a few of those that are selling the book also. But this is not your first book, I understand. So this was a little bit of a new genre for you, but you had previously or also have a children's book out. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
I'd be happy to. So I just happen to have a copy right here. So the children's book is called Spotted Tail, and it was published in 2019 by Raycraft Books. And it's for middle grade folks. It's illustrated by a wonderful Indigenous artist named Jim Yellowhawk. And he just did really an amazing job with the illustrations. So it is for, I would say, readers maybe 6 to 12. I'm trying to find a good, here's a nice, if you can see, and don't have too much glare here. he just did, I think, a really brilliant job with the artwork. And so Spotted Tail, obviously, this is a picture book for Native kids, but I wanted Sicangu kids to have a picture book about the great leader of our nation. You know, when my kids were growing up, they read, whoop, am I still coming in okay? I just had a cable go loose there.
Yep.
I'm still coming in. Okay, cool. Sorry about that. Yeah, so you know, when my kids were growing up, they read, you know, there's some kids books out there about, I think, Geronimo and Sitting Bull, and maybe even one on Crazy Horse. I'm not sure, but there wasn't anything about Spotted Tail. So Raycraft Books issued a call for people of color, writers of color, and I said I would love to do a kid's biography of Spotted Tail. And I want to be clear here: I don't actually make any royalties from this book. So I sent copies to every elementary school and library on the Lakota reservations. And then the pandemic hit. I was going to do a tour of schools on the res and such, and I had some conversations with them. But then, of course, this terrible virus hits us. But you know, it's available in hardback and paperback. And I just want to renew my offer that if there's a Native family out there that would like a copy and can't afford one, you know, contact me and I'll make sure, you know, that a Native family gets a copy, because I just love the idea of a little kid reading about Spotted Tail and his life. So it's a very positive, hopefully an uplifting book. So thank you for giving me the chance. You know, it didn't get, Raycraft is a new publisher, so it didn't get a ton of distribution or press. It's not even sold here in Colorado. And it won the Spur Award for the best children's nonfiction book a year ago. And it was nominated for the Colorado Book Award for the best children's book. And yet you can't buy it in a store out here. It's difficult to get, unfortunately. So again, you know, folks, I just, you know, any family, contact me through my website and I'll make sure you get a copy.
With that being said, I'm sure a lot of people would have interest here in Rosebud trying to get access to that book. So how do people contact you? Is it just through your website? Do you have an Instagram, Facebook?
I do have an Instagram that I mainly just use to post pictures. People, I just got on Instagram and I kind of love it. I'm not really good at technology myself, but people love to take pictures of this book. So I've had on my Instagram like over 300 people take pictures of themselves reading this book, or they like to take it to mountains or the beach or something. And about 15 or 20 book clubs have adopted it. So I just like to post the pictures of people reading it. Nobody's ever taken a picture of them reading Spotted Tail, which kind of makes me sad, you know? So I do have an Instagram account. I'm on Twitter which is my address or whatever is at Wanbli Heska Weiden. And on my website, which is davidwiden.com, you can read about stuff, and my email address is on there.